The morning sunlight spilled softly through the kitchen window, wrapping everything in a warm, golden haze. The scent of freshly brewed coffee floated through the air, blending with the faint sound of birds outside. It was one of those mornings that felt gentle, unhurried, the kind that made Emily believe that peace could last forever. Daniel sat across from her at the small wooden table, his head bent slightly as he scrolled through his phone. His coffee sat untouched, steam curling faintly above it. Emily smiled faintly, watching him. She loved these quiet mornings, no rush, no noise, just the two of them sharing silence that once felt comfortable. But today, something was different. Daniel's silence felt heavier than usual, almost sharp. When she asked if he wanted more toast, he only nodded, eyes never leaving the screen. His jaw was tight, his shoulders rigid. A subtle unease began to stir in Emily's chest, the kind that whispers that something's wrong long before you know what it is. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked softly, trying to sound casual. He looked up then, just for a second. His eyes, usually warm and steady, held a flicker of something distant. Cold. Conflicted. "Yeah," he said finally. The word felt flat, like it didn't mean anything at all. Emily forced a small smile, pretending not to notice. She reached for her cup, but her hand trembled slightly. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual, filling the silence between them. She didn't know it yet, but that silence was the sound of her world beginning to crack. In another moment, Daniel's phone buzzed on the table. He turned it over quickly, screen down. Emily barely caught a glimpse. A pause video. The faint outline of a younger woman who looked hauntingly familiar. Her heart skipped once, then fell still. The storm was coming. The house felt colder that evening. The kind of cold that had nothing to do with weather. It came from silence, from distance, from something unsaid. Emily stood by the sink, rinsing dinner plates under running water, her thoughts drifting lazily from work deadlines to weekend plans. Behind her, she heard the slow creak of the floorboards. Daniel was standing there, still and quiet. "Emily," he said finally, his voice low, too calm. She turned, a smile already forming, but faded when she saw his face. His eyes were unreadable, his jaw tight. He was holding his phone in his hand, screen facing her. "I need to ask you something," he said, "and I want the truth." Her stomach twisted. "Of course. What's wrong?" He hesitated for a long moment, then tapped the screen. A video began to play. The sound filled the room. Laughter, music, voices echoing from another lifetime. Her body went cold. There she was, 10 years younger, wilder, lost in a blur of flashing lights and hands that didn't belong to her. The image hit her like a slap. She couldn't breathe. Where did you get that?" she whispered, voice shaking. Daniel's gaze didn't waver. "Does it matter? You never told me. You never even hinted at this." Tears burned her eyes. "That was years before I met you, Daniel. I was stupid. I was broken. I didn't even—" He cut her off sharply. "You lied by silence, Emily. You let me think you were someone else. Someone purer." Her lips trembled. "I didn't lie. I changed." His expression hardened. "Then why does it feel like I don't know who you are anymore?" The room was thick with tension, with pain neither of them knew how to name. Emily reached out, but he stepped back. The distance between them felt like an ocean. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the sound of the video still playing, the echo of her past, filled the air. And in that moment, Emily realized that the past she had buried was no longer dead. It had just been waiting to be found. 10 years earlier, Emily was a different person, or at least that's what she told herself all these years. But as the images from the video replayed in her mind, the memories she had tried so hard to bury began to surface, sharp and unrelenting. She had been 24, reckless, and heartbreak had hollowed her out. Her first love had left without explanation, and in the aftermath, she mistook chaos for freedom. Nights blurred together, neon lights, music too loud to think, drinks too strong to care. It was easier that way. That night was supposed to be just another party. She remembered the laughter, the crowd, the way everyone's faces seemed to blend together in a dizzying whirl of noise and color. She remembered the taste of vodka, the smoke in the air, the feeling of being wanted. Even if only for a moment. There were 3 men that night, friends of friends. She didn't even remember their names. What she did remember was the way they looked at her, like she was both fascinating and disposable. She'd been too drunk, too sad, too tired to stop pretending she was fine. Later, when she saw the flashes of a phone camera, she thought nothing of it. Everyone recorded everything back then. She didn't realize until days later that a video had been made, shared, laughed about, whispered through circles of people she barely knew. When she found out, she felt sick. She wanted to disappear. For months, she lived in shame, terrified someone would recognize her, that the girl in the video would follow her forever. She left that city, deleted her old social media, cut ties with almost everyone she knew. She started over. New job, new friends, new version of herself. She went to therapy, stopped drinking, and learned to forgive that lost, broken girl she used to be. She thought she had succeeded. She thought she'd become someone new, someone clean, someone worthy. And then, years later, she met Daniel. Kind, steady, the type of man who made her believe in gentle love again. When he asked about her past, she told him the truth, or most of it. She said she had made mistakes, that she wasn't perfect. He smiled and said, "Who is?" She never imagined the one thing she left unspoken would one day shatter everything they built. Now, sitting alone in the same house where she had once found safety, Emily felt the weight of that forgotten night crush her again. Proof that the past doesn't vanish. It only waits, patient and silent, for the moment you least expect it to return. The air was heavy with the weight of unspoken words. The evening sun bled across the horizon, casting long, trembling shadows over the old courtyard where they stood. 2 souls bound by anger, sorrow, and a love that had long lost its way. Every heartbeat echoed like thunder in the silence that separated them. Elena's hands trembled, not from fear, but from a storm of emotions that had been locked inside her for far too long. "You promised me honesty, Daniel," she said, her voice sharp yet breaking at the edges. Was that just another lie? Daniel turned away, his eyes fixed on the dying light. His silence spoke louder than any confession. He had built a wall of pride between them, one that love alone could no longer tear down. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and tired, carrying the weight of regret. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was protecting you, from the truth, from myself." Elena's eyes glistened. "Protecting me?" she repeated bitterly. "You destroyed the only thing I believed in. You destroyed us." A gust of wind swept through the courtyard, scattering the fallen leaves like memories they could never gather again. Daniel took a hesitant step forward, his face pale with desperation. "I can't change what I did," he whispered. "But please don't walk away. Not yet." Tears welled in Elena's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had cried enough, nights filled with silent pain and unanswered questions. "You had your chance," she said softly, her voice trembling but resolute. "And every time I reached out, you turned away. You made me fight for something you'd already given up on." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to reach for her, to hold her like he used to, but her expression stopped him. There was strength in her sadness, a quiet finality that broke his heart more than her words ever could. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then Elena turned, her figure bathed in the fading gold of sunset. "Goodbye, Daniel," she murmured. "May you find the peace you stole from me." As she walked away, Daniel felt the world collapse around him. The courtyard, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, now stood silent, a graveyard of promises. He watched until her silhouette disappeared into the gathering dusk, and only then did he realize that the confrontation was not just with her, but with the truth he had been running from all along. The sun dipped below the horizon, and darkness claimed the sky. But in that darkness, Daniel finally understood. Some battles are not meant to be won. They are meant to be survived. The days melted into one another, silent and colorless. The world outside continued its restless rhythm, but inside the small apartment, time seemed to stand still. Elena sat by the window every morning, watching the pale sunlight creep across the floor, tracing the same patterns day after day. It was strange how quiet life became when there was no one left to speak to, no voice calling her name, no heartbeat beside her own. At first, the isolation felt unbearable, a weight pressing against her chest, stealing her breath. Every corner of the room whispered with memories, the laughter that once echoed to the hallways, the warmth of shared mornings, the tender chaos of love. But as the silence deepened, something inside her began to shift. The pain that had once consumed her slowly transformed into a kind of stillness, a space where she could finally hear herself think. She realized how much of her life she had spent chasing shadows, seeking validation, forgiveness, and meaning from someone who had already drifted away. In the quiet, she confronted the reflection in the glass. Tired eyes, a fragile smile, and a heart still beating despite the scars. There, in that solitude, she met herself again, the woman she had forgotten while trying to hold on to someone else. The days grew softer after that. She started to write again, to walk beneath the evening sky, to breathe without guilt. Loneliness no longer felt like a curse but like a companion, a mirror showing her strength and resilience. The world outside still moved with its noise and confusion, but Elena no longer feared its distance. For the first time in a long while, she understood that isolation was not the end of love, but the beginning of healing. It was a quiet in which her soul learned to speak again. It had been months since that last painful goodbye. The wounds had healed just enough for Elena to breathe without breaking, but the memories still clung to her like the scent of rain after storm. One afternoon, as autumn leaves swirled through the streets, she received a message from Daniel, short, hesitant, and filled with the quiet ache of regret. "Can we talk?" Her heart trembled as she read those words. Part of her wanted to ignore them, to bury the past beneath the peace she had finally begun to find. Yet another part, the part that still remembered his laughter, his warmth, whispered that maybe, just maybe, some things deserved closure. When they met at the old cafe by the river, time seemed to fold in on itself. The same table, the same familiar scent of coffee and rain. But everything else had changed. Daniel looked older, wearier, a man humbled by the consequences of his silence. "Elena," he began softly, his voice catching, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to see you, to say I'm sorry, truly sorry." For a long moment, she said nothing. Her eyes searched his face, looking for the truth behind the words. "Do you even know what you're apologizing for?" she finally asked. "For lying to me? For leaving? Or for realizing too late what I was worth?" His shoulders sagged under the weight of her words. "For all of it," he whispered. "For breaking something I didn't know how to cherish until it was gone." A fragile silence settled between them. The river outside shimmered with fading sunlight, as if listening. Elena felt tears rise, but they were not tears of pain. They were the soft release of acceptance. "I don't hate you anymore," she said quietly, "but I can't go back. We've both changed, and maybe that's the only forgiveness we'll ever need." Daniel nodded, his eyes glistening, and as they parted, no anger, no bitterness, only a gentle understanding. They both knew that reconciliation wasn't always about rekindling love. Sometimes it was simply about finding peace where pain once lived. The days that followed their final meeting felt strangely calm, as though the storm that had once consumed Elena's heart had finally passed. There were no tears this time, no sleepless nights replaying what was said or left unsaid. Just silence, not the empty kind that echoed with loss, but the peaceful kind that comes after understanding. For the first time in years, she felt free. The memories of Daniel no longer burned. They glowed faintly, like distant stars, beautiful, unreachable, and harmless. She had loved him deeply, and that love had once broken her. But now, it had become something else, a lesson, a memory, a quiet gratitude for what was and what would never be again. Elena began to rebuild her life, piece by piece. She filled her mornings with sunlight and her evenings with books and soft music. Friends she had pushed away slowly returned, their laughter reminding her that joy could still exist in simple things. And though her heart still carried faint scars, she wore them with quiet pride, proof that she had survived, that she had grown stronger through the wreckage of what once was. Sometimes she would walk by the river where they had last met, The cafe still stood there, its windows glowing warmly in the dusk. She never went inside, but she would pause for a moment, watching the water move, steady, unstoppable, always flowing forward. In that reflection, she saw her own life mirrored back at her. Daniel, too, had changed. Somewhere out there, he was learning to live with his choices, just as she had learned to forgive them. They were two stories that had once intertwined, now running parallel, separate, but at peace. In the aftermath of love, Elena discovered something she had never known before: the strength to let go without bitterness, to remember without pain, and to move forward without fear. The past no longer defined her. It simply reminded her how far she had come.